there is not room for both you and God on your heart, you need to step down and let him have full control. And that's what I finally had to learn to do, is to just give God my whole heart. My name is Nick Chucka, and this is my story. So my testimony, my story actually goes all the way back to when I was a baby. At some point when I was either born or right after I was born, one of those times, I was diagnosed with this disease that most people haven't heard of. Or at least it doesn't seem like most people have heard of it. And it's called Kawasaki's disease. And no, it's not the motorcycle. I've actually had people ask me that before. But yeah, so I don't know much about the disease. I only know that it makes you restless. I think I may have Googled it at one point, but I cannot remember for the life of me what I learned. So that's the only thing I know about it. But there's a lot more to it than that. But this disease almost killed me. And God saved my life. God healed me of the disease. And when I double checked with my mom, she reminded me that when I was about 2 years old, she surrendered me to the Lord as a little toddler. And she said, God, I can promise you, if you let him live, he's yours, not mine. And God healed me of the disease. And I'm still alive today because of that. So God saved my life from that. But as I continued to grow, I was raised in a very well-protected environment. So I wasn't exposed to a lot of things growing up because my parents tried so hard to make sure that I was protected from this world and the toxicities of this world. But make no mistake, just because I was raised in a very well-protected environment, that doesn't mean that I didn't deal with my own share of struggles and difficulties and temptations. I did. I mean, I cannot share my story without sharing this, because this is a huge part of my testimony, a huge part of it. And I say that because not everyone's comfortable hearing this, but I really believe that it has to be shared because it's a huge part of my story, and it was a struggle for me for so many years, my whole life. And now I'm just beginning to experience so much freedom from it, and it's awesome. And that would be my struggle with same-sex attraction. My struggle with same-sex attraction actually began at a very young age. I was maybe about 6 or 7 years old. So I was very, very young. Now, obviously, I did not know what sex was back then, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have those feelings. Like, I knew what it felt like to feel that arousal. I would say that in my case, it was the desire just coming out of nowhere all of a sudden. Like, again, I don't know where it came from, just like that, it came out of nowhere. And I will say that it is definitely psychological, because there was definitely something, for me, there was something up here that shifted sexually at some point. And from what I understand, we all experience a sexual shift at some point in our lives. For some, it happens earlier. For some, it happens later in life. For me, it happened earlier in life. And when I experienced my shift just happened to be towards the same gender. And it started off with being turned on by shirtless guys. And then it was when someone would moon me or whatever. And to this day, I do not find mooning funny. I think it's inappropriate. I mean, you're exposing yourself, literally. It's, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see how people can find that amusing, but whatever. So it came out of nowhere. And there were certain things, for whatever reason, there were certain things that I would watch on TV that for some reason, God knows what reason, would trigger that in me. So, and again, that's one of those things that I've experienced so much freedom from. Like, Jesus has shown me those thoughts and those struggles that I used to have, and those things that used to trigger them. And he's like, I'm showing you these things for what they really are. I'm showing you what they've done to you, but look at where you are now. The chains have fallen. And so, yeah, like you said, it's different for everybody. But for me, that's what it was. It wasn't, I was not raped. I was not molested. I was not sexually abused in any way. I did not even start looking at porn until I was 21. And stupid me, I looked at porn one night and then I promised myself that would be the only time I wouldn't go back to it. No, I was wrong. Porn really is addictive. So at that point, I just kept going back to it over and over and over again. And then, and at that point, I did not have a smartphone. And so I did not have access to the internet. I just had a regular old school phone. Sometimes I kind of miss those things. Even the flip phones nowadays have the internet, and it's quite efficient, believe it or not. So the flip phones are not as they used to be. So we live in a day and age where the internet is readily available to us at any time, as long as we have service or Wi-Fi or whatever. But back then, all I had was my computer. So at that point, when I became addicted to porn, I could only look at it on my computer, and that was it. That was my only source. Then I got a smartphone, and sometimes I wish I wouldn't have upgraded because, well, when I upgraded to a smartphone, I started looking at porn on my smartphone. And so, and when that started happening, I could do it without access to Wi-Fi if I wanted to. And I could do it without anybody knowing because it's my phone. Nobody has access to it but me. And I even learned how to erase my browsing history so that nobody could even look back on it. And this struggle just went on and on and on for so many years. And as I got older, the attractions just grew stronger and stronger, especially on into my teenage years, in my 20s. It just got stronger and stronger to the point that I just started to feel like it was really weighing me down, and I started to feel like I couldn't be free even if I wanted to. When I was a teenager, I actually was in sort of a secret homosexual relationship. And this went on for about a year. And it was my fault. I was the one who literally started it. And that was one of those things that I had such a hard time forgiving myself for. But the way I initialized that relationship between me and my friend at the time was when I was about 12 years old. I saw something that has came back to haunt me for so many years. I was at what is now CSU Pueblo, but back then it was called USC, University of Southern Colorado. Now it's Colorado State University, Pueblo. I was at that university and I saw a guy who looked to be about maybe 18 years old, 17 or 18, raping this boy who looked to be about my age at the time. And I don't know what I was thinking, but for some reason I thought they were friends. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought that, because that is definitely not true friendship there. And for years, I struggled with just feeling so much guilt and condemnation because of that, because I felt like that was my fault, because I saw that happening and I didn't do anything to help him. And then when I was 21 years old, another friend of mine came along and he said, "It is not your fault. You were only 12 years old at the time. How were you supposed to know what to do?" And I said, "You're right." And that's what really put me on the path to forgiving myself for that. But to this day, I still hope and pray that that little boy, who would now be a young man, I hope and pray that he's okay. I can't imagine how that must have affected him. I mean, it was hard enough for me having to see that, but for him to actually experience it, that must have been difficult. So, going back to the relationship I was in, the homosexual relationship, I used that incident to initialize this relationship between him and I. And I said to him, "Let me demonstrate on you." And that's how it all started. This went on for a year. Well, I never really started to experience any conviction whatsoever about it until 2009. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and mention another name. He's a very good man. My friend Tim. I felt the need to open up to Tim about it because at that point, Tim was discipling me or trying to disciple me. And if you ask me, he did a fantastic job. I definitely wasn't the easiest person to disciple because of my pride and my insecurity and my emotional issues. I wasn't the easiest person to talk to deal with. And we would go various places so we could talk and pray and read whatever book we were reading together. And one of the places that Tim wanted to take me to was this park where my friend and I actually had sex. And for whatever reason, I started to feel for the first time a certain discomfort going to that place because of that memory. And I told Tim, I said, "I don't want to go there. And here's why." And I told him what happened between my friend and I. And I felt incredibly uncomfortable bringing that to his attention, but I felt it had to be done. And that was when the conviction really first began. But up until then, I just said, "You know what, screw it. I'm just gonna keep on lusting as much as I want. I don't care." It didn't matter to me. But I tried to deny the gay label whenever someone would call me gay. I would actually get offended and I would be like, "Please don't ever call me that ever again." But 2014 is when I started embracing the gay label. But I still remember in 2009, I mean, this is not who he is now. He's a really good person, but at that time, one of the kids in the youth group called me gay almost constantly, and it really started to upset me. And then Tim actually stood up for me, and he was like, don't ever call him that ever again. And so, I mean, again, it all just goes back to that whole being fake thing, living a lie, hiding. I hid my desires because I didn't want, if anyone knew what my desires were at that time, I knew what would happen. And then sure enough, when I started being more open about it to people in the church, specifically Tim and our pastor at that time, eventually the decision was made to remove me from youth ministry because of that. And, you know, in all actuality, that really didn't help. You know, that did not help me to heal from that. At that time, I didn't think anything of it. But then when the conviction started, I was like, what am I doing? I'm such a horrible person. Look at me. This is bad. This is awful. And so thank goodness I'm free from that. And I don't have those desires anymore. But at that time, it was really hard. So as for the Christian label, the only reason I wore the Christian label was because, again, I wanted to be accepted by the church. And so I would be in church and I would be like, yeah, I'm a Christian, whatever. And then I would go outside of church and I would live a completely different life. And I was living a double life is what I was doing. And so that was basically it. And then 2010, we finally reunited again for just a brief moment so I could reconcile with him, because I really put him through a lot, and I wanted to apologize to him for that, and I did. And so that was another very healing experience, getting to meet with him and reconcile. And then after that, I continued to deal with so many other issues besides just the same-sex attraction. I was dealing with all kinds of emotional issues and mental issues. One of the things that I dealt with throughout my childhood and even on into adulthood is just feeling very insecure. I don't know if there's been a study on this or what, but apparently, as it turns out, people who are prideful, very arrogant, are usually very insecure deep down. And so that's why they're so prideful, because they always have to put other people down to make themselves feel better. When I was about 16 years old, one of our relatives moved in with us. Actually, I was 16 at the time. One of our relatives moved in with us, and she was very, very, very mean to us, especially my mom and myself. She's actually the only one who's ever bullied me. I mean, really bullied me. I was homeschooled my whole life, so I never experienced bullying in public school, ever. Again, protected environment. I was protected from all of that. And then when I turned 18 and I started to learn what actually goes on, the problems that kids have in public school, I started to feel super grateful that I was protected from all that. I never really appreciated it until that point. When I was 16 years old and this all started to happen, I started to really struggle with suicidal thoughts. Not necessarily intentions. I never really had an intention to go through with it, but I thought about it over and over, just after being put down so much, wondering if my life really does serve a purpose, wondering if the world would really be better off without me. And I just struggled and struggled with that for about a year or two, and then finally the suicidal thoughts finally went away after about a year or two. Thank goodness for that. But I know I keep going back and forth here. So that was when I was about 16. So when I was 22, that was when I got to meet with my friend and reconcile with him, my friend I had been in the relationship with. Then, after that, 2009, when it comes to my emotional issues, 2009, I would say, was probably the worst. It was the worst year when it came to that. That was when my emotional issues were at their worst. People say I'm a lot of fun to be around with right now, but chances are you probably wouldn't have liked hanging out with me back then, because I was very easily offendable. I was constantly, in my mind, I was just constantly twisting things around, like certain situations and people, and making things and people out to what they were not, things that they were not, and making them out to seem worse than they really were. And I was so full of pride and ready to blame someone else rather than take responsibility myself. So I was prideful, I was fake, I was insecure, I was angry, I was hateful. See, growing up, and I don't know if this is because of the disease or if it was because of my autism. I actually found out that I'm autistic. I found that out about 13 years ago. So whether it's because of the autism or the disease that I once had, I don't know, but these emotional issues are issues that I've carried with me my whole life, from a little kid all the way up till adulthood. And even as a kid, I could be hateful one moment and very loving the next, or vice versa. And then when I was 21 years old, back in 2009, it was the same thing. I could be very hateful one moment and very loving the next. So that never changed. It was just magnified as an adult, if that makes any sense. And I would say 2010, the year I got to reconcile with my friend, I would say 2010 is when I finally started to experience even just a little bit of healing from those issues. And I'm super grateful, because I didn't think I would ever experience healing from that. I wasn't sure if it would ever happen, but it did. So growing up, I was just, well, I think I mentioned before that I was so fake. And the main reason why I was so fake was because I was just so afraid of rejection. And so because I did not want anyone to reject me, I did everything I could to fit in everywhere I was. So I grew up in a Christian conservative home, and I would be, especially when I became a teenager, I would be one way in church and a completely different way outside of church, because I wanted everyone to accept me, as many people as possible. I wanted the people in the church to accept me, and I wanted the people outside of church to accept me. So I did everything I could to be accepted. And for whatever reason, I don't know why. Again, I feel like such a fool. I don't know why, but I lacked a lot of appreciation for my family. My family has been very, very good to me. Both my parents, my brother, my sister, and to this day, they're all still very good to me. But back then, I never appreciated that for some reason. So for whatever reason, I would be quick to side with other people, but I would be quick to go against my family. And I would tell my family, I would be like, well, you guys are saying this, but this person's saying this over here. I'm gonna go with what they say, or whatever. And I hurt my brother. Not sure if I hurt my sister. I probably did. I was pretty mean to her back then. And I hurt my parents. And looking back on that now, I'm just like, what was I thinking? So I've done everything I can now to show them the appreciation that I've never shown them before, especially my mom, because my mom has always done such a fantastic job taking care of me and my brother and my sister. She has been the best mother anyone could ever ask for, and I took her for granted. But even going into my 20s, that being fake, it still continued. And I used to do youth ministry back then, but I will definitely say that I was not doing it with the right heart. So again, same thing, I would be one way at youth group and another way outside of youth group. Another way in church, another way outside of church. 2013 is when I finally started being real and letting people know these are the things that I believe, this is what I'm questioning. And so I decided to face the risk of rejection. I knew that the price I would have to pay for being real would be to risk rejection. And sure enough, there were people who rejected me. There were people who turned their backs on me and said, well, if this is the path you're going to choose, we want nothing to do with you. So they walked away. And I knew that would happen. I knew it. On October 1st, 2014, I actually did come out as gay. And I came out publicly using Facebook. So obviously, it is no secret. Everybody knows. For some reason, at that point, opening up to people in the church just wasn't enough for me, and I decided that I wanted everybody to know. So I came out publicly, and I told everybody, this is what I'm dealing with, and I've dealt with it my whole life. And in doing so, what I did was I opened myself up to what I call, I opened myself up to 3 different groups of people. And I have a label for each one of them except for one. Okay, so I opened myself up to one group that I would like to call the condemners. They were the ones who were so quick to be like, you're going to hell. And of course that just made me mad, and I was like, whatever, I'm done listening to you. Yeah. Then there was this group over here that I would like to call the cheerleaders. They were the ones who were like, yeah, we support you all the way, we're with you. And there for a little while, that seemed to work. I was like, okay, you guys are pretty cool. I think I'll keep you around. But then there was this one group in the middle. I don't really have a label for them, but they're the ones who had the most impact on me. And they're the ones who are still with me to this very day. The condemners obviously shunned me and won't have anything to do with me. But guess what? The cheerleaders they don't even want to be with me either, because I've given my heart to Jesus and I've chosen to run from my attractions. And so to them, I'm like a traitor. And I'm especially considered a traitor to the gay community. They feel like I've betrayed them. But this group in the middle, they're still with me. And they're the ones who have had the most impact on me from the very start. Because while this group was over here condemning me, and this group was over here cheering me on, both extremes, they were the ones who were like, well, we don't agree with it, but we love you anyway, and we're here for you. And they're still with me. And I'm super grateful for those people. You all know who you are. And so was coming out publicly wise? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But nevertheless, that was a very intense experience, just getting hit from all different sides. But so what happened was, this is what I'm getting at. When I chose to come out publicly, I let the condemners really get to me. And I started to feel angry and upset and irritated and even hateful towards them and even towards God. I said, okay, God, if this is who you are, if you are just some angry being in the sky who's ready to strike me should I step out of line, then I cannot bring myself to follow you or even worship you or obey you. I have no choice but to walk away. Until I know you actually care about me, I have to walk away from you. I'm sorry. And so I did. Sometime in March of 2015, I officially walked away from God. I walked away from Jesus. I didn't really physically walk away from the church, but like deep down I did. Amazingly enough, even during that crazy rebellious time in my life, I was still going to church. I was still attending church. But it was the weirdest thing because during that crazy rebellious time in my life, I felt so numb. And even though I was at church physically with everybody, this is nobody's fault but mine. But while I was physically there with everybody, I still felt numb. Everything was just a blur. It was that lonely in a crowd feeling. So it wasn't that anybody was rejecting me or treating me like dirt. It was because I was lost. I had no clarity. I thought I did, but I didn't. And I just got really tired of that. And eventually, when I was alone in my apartment one day, I started to feel like, okay, well, I know what I have to do. And I chose to give my heart to Jesus that day in my apartment. And I immediately started making changes and cleaning up my life and cleaning myself up. There was a gay porn DVD along with a sex toy. First thing I did, I threw those away. I threw them into a public trash can, so hopefully nobody found them. I did put them into a bag so they wouldn't be seen, but I threw them into a trash can, never to be seen again. But sex toys are not cheap, so I spent a lot of money on this sex toy for just momentary pleasure, and then I gave my heart to Jesus, and that expensive thing went into the trash right away. And I still remember what it looks like, but I don't miss it at all. And I feel like an idiot because I'm like, why did I spend money on that thing? It wasn't worth it. I mean, a moment of pleasure is not worth it for the emptiness that follows afterwards. I was blinded by my own pride. I was angry. I was selfish. and I didn't care about anybody else. I only cared about me. I tried to pretend that I cared about other people, but I didn't really. And so eventually I reached a point where I just got so sick and tired of being fake, and I got so sick and tired of being numb and just wandering through my life like a zombie. It's kind of how I felt. Again, it took me years to finally get to this point, but as for how I ended up dealing with them, like when I first gave my heart to Jesus, I just kept on repenting over and over again. And eventually I started to feel like repentance wasn't enough. There had to be something more. And so what I did was I just started praying and asking Jesus. I was like, is there any way you can set me free from this? I'm ready for it. Whatever you have for me. I'm ready to obey you, whatever it is. And I declared in that moment that he was the only one who could set me free, because I tried going to counseling. I tried talking with pastors about it and different people, and none of that worked for me. I mean, it helped a little bit because there is value in opening up, but at the core, deep down, it didn't really help me at all. Not really. Eventually, I started to realize that I needed to really learn how to truly take my thoughts captive. It talks about that somewhere in Scripture. I can't remember where at the moment, but it does talk about taking your thoughts captive, and what that means is any thoughts that are not glorifying to Jesus, any thoughts that are not good, that are not pure. You take those thoughts and you give them to Jesus, and you say, take this away from me. I don't want it anymore. I mean, one of the mistakes that I made was trying to take my thoughts captive of my own strength. But obviously, I'm only human. So I'm not strong enough to do it in my own strength. I need him to help me with that. So when I finally started learning to let Jesus take my thoughts from me, is when I finally started to experience true freedom in my thought life. You know, what I do, it looks different for everybody, but one of the things that has brought me freedom in my thought life is just surrendering my thoughts to Jesus and saying, take my thoughts, do with them whatever you will. They're yours. All angry thoughts and all lustful thoughts must go away in Jesus' name. And the desires, same thing. I've had to surrender my desires to him and let him reshape my desires. And one of the visions that I received last night was a vision of these flowers just burning away and burning to ashes. But then almost simultaneously, right next to them, these brand new flowers sprouted up from the ground and blossomed. And the Holy Spirit used that vision last night to teach me, or to reveal to me, that those flowers burning away and turning to ashes represent my old desires dying away, and the new ones sprouting up and blossoming represent the new desires that he's giving me. And then above all, he has really given me the strength and taught me to look at people through what I would call a love lens and not a lust lens. Because again, there's a difference between love and lust. And so he has taught me to look at people with love and compassion and not with lust. And so bottom line, I would say, is it really just all comes down to total surrender. There really is freedom in surrendering to Jesus, totally surrendering to him. Because dare I say it, even after I gave my heart to him, I don't think I was still fully surrendered at that point. Not until maybe a couple of years ago. I don't know. I mean, yes, I started walking with him on August 7th, 2015, but I think, like, on the throne of my heart, I still wanted to sit on the throne, though I might not have realized it at that point. And the fact of the matter is that there's not, I'm kind of borrowing this from one of my favorite Christian movies called War Room. If you haven't seen that, I totally recommend it. But there's a line in the movie where she says to the woman that she is mentoring, she says, there is not room for both you and God on your heart. You need to step down and let him have full control. And that's what I finally had to learn to do, is to just give God my whole heart and step down from the throne, say, I can't do this anymore. You're all I want. You're all I need. And just let him have complete control. But it also involves, if you've got any pride whatsoever, it involves some painful weeding. Like, you have to let him weed out that pride so that you can finally be humble enough to step down and say, the throne of my heart is completely yours. Not more of you, less of me, as John the Baptist said, or at least I think it was John the Baptist.
Wow.
So anyone who's dealing with same-sex attraction, whether you're a guy who's struggling with feeling sexually attracted to guys, or you're a woman who's struggling with feeling sexually attracted to women, first of all, know that you're not alone. There are so many people out there who are dealing with the same things that you are. And another thing that you need to realize, and thankfully more and more people are realizing this, is the fact that lust is lust, regardless of what form it comes in. And so when people are quick to judge you because you happen to be attracted to the same gender, if you feel compelled to, maybe remind them, hey, you're dealing with the same thing. Just because you're attracted to the opposite gender, that does not mean that you're not fighting the same battles I am. It's just a different form of lust that you're dealing with, and that is true. That is a fact. And the fact of the matter is, lust, no matter what form it comes in, it's wrong either way, no matter what, because of the message that lust sends out to people. It degrades people. It devalues them. It tells people, I love your body. Your one and only purpose in life is to serve me with your body. Whereas the message that love sends is, I love you. I would die for you if I had to. That's love. Two completely different messages, two completely different things. And then, after realizing that lust is lust, no matter what form it comes in, realizing you're not the only one who struggles with this, lastly, just fully surrender to Jesus and let him break those chains off, because he is the only one who can. The only one. So I cannot stress enough the importance of knowing that you're not the only one who deals with this, because I really believe that that's one of the lies the enemy whispers into our ears is, look at you, you are so messed up. You're the only one who struggles with this. Everybody else is fine. What's wrong with you? You maniac? Or whatever. And those are, if you're hearing that whisper in your head saying those things to you, know that that is the enemy speaking lies over you. It's not true. You are not the only one. You are not alone. And I believe that once you realize you're not alone and that you're not the only one, that will set you on the path to healing. And that is just the beginning. Trust me. My relationship with Jesus is amazing right now. I mean, and it just keeps getting better. Unfortunately, the more intimate I become with Jesus, the more the enemy attacks. So I find myself waking up early just so I can be with him, just so I can be with Jesus. And I'm not a morning person, like, at all. But so when my alarm goes off in the morning and I wake up, I'm just like, this is for you, okay? I'm doing this for you. Just throw some water on my face, help myself wake up, and then read my Bible and pray. And even if it's just for 20 or 30 minutes, that's better than nothing. I feel like any time with him, any time with Jesus is better than nothing. And of course, he walks with us even throughout our busy lives if we invite him to. And so I would describe my relationship with him as, well, better than it's ever been. And I'm pretty confident that it's going to keep getting better. And so, and it's way better than any temporary pleasure that sex has to offer, or drugs or anything. Way better than that. So, yeah, that's how I would describe it. There is one more thing that I'd like to share with everybody, and that is this. I'm sure you have probably heard it said before that if you don't deal with past hurts, you will end up cutting those who never cut you in the first place. And that is so true. Back in my BC days, as I call them, when I was so angry and insecure and lashing out at people, I had a specific list of people in my mind who hurt me, and I wanted to hurt them back. But guess what? In the process, I ended up hurting those I never intended to hurt. I ended up hurting people who never hurt me in the first place. At one point, my mom described me to somebody as her prodigal son. And that's fine, because I am that modern day prodigal son. Because I'm the one who walked away. And then I came back, just like the prodigal son who's talked about in the Bible. Except that I did not have a bunch of riches to spend. That was the only difference. But regardless, I walked away and I lived this wild, carefree life. And then I got so sick and tired of the emptiness I felt, so I came back to Jesus, and Jesus welcomed me back with open arms. And I haven't been the same ever since. And there is no way I would ever go back to what I had before. I mean, why would I? I was so miserable back then. Now, even after I gave my heart to Jesus, does that mean I became perfect right away? Of course not. Like I said, we're all works in progress. And so when I gave my heart to Jesus and started on my journey to healing, walking with him hand in hand, it took me, like I said, here we are into the year 2022. Here it's taken me almost 7 years to get to where I'm at now. And in that 7 years, Jesus has helped me overcome same-sex attraction, emotional issues, fear. He has taught me what it really looks like to experience freedom through forgiveness. And my love for people has been increased so much to the point that it's overflowing. And I can even be, say, at Walmart amongst a bunch of people that I don't even know. And I'm just smiling at everybody like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Yeah. Just talking to them like they're my friends, even though they're total strangers, but I don't care. And for some reason, I feel compelled to go ahead and mention his name again. But Pastor Tony was one of those people that I ended up hurting, and he was not on my list. And yet, despite how heartbroken he was, he never gave up on me. And if that's not true love, I don't know what is. He stayed by my side. Even though he barely knew me, he never walked away from me. Because at that point, we were just acquaintances. He barely knew me. We said maybe a few words to each other, and that was it, at least in person. Then I went through all that crazy stuff, and he followed my journey on Facebook. And not once did he walk away. And then when I started coming across Parallel, he welcomed me back into his life with open arms. So my encouragement to everyone is, if you've got some past hurts that you haven't dealt with yet, please deal with them before it's too late. Because if you don't, you will end up pushing people away who don't deserve to be pushed away. Recently, I received a vision of Jesus and I walking together hand in hand. And what would happen is the devil, Satan, would come at me and he would attack me from all different sides. He would come from in front of me, he would come from behind me, or from the side. And what Jesus would do is he would temporarily let go of my hand and he would beat Satan down to the ground. Just beat him down. And then he would come back over to me and hold my hand, and we would continue to walk. And the Lord used that vision to teach me that I just need to let go, and I need to trust in him and let him fight my battles for me. Because the mistake I made in 2021 was I made the mistake of not opening up to anybody for so long, not even my closest friends. And I tried to fight my battles alone. I will never do that again. Even Pastor Tony said to me, don't you ever do that again. You were never meant to fight this alone. And he's absolutely right. And so I finally started opening up to people again. And I will never make that same mistake again, ever. What was I thinking? And I'm confident that if I keep this up, if I keep learning to trust in him, 2022 will be the best year of my life. And on from that. I never really knew what it meant to be content with what you have, with the way things are. Not deep down anyway. I've never been an extremely ambitious person. I guess I don't really have the drive that some people have. There's a word for that, and I can't remember what it is. It's not lazy, it's something else, but at the moment it's slipping my mind. But even though I never really had that drive, I still found myself struggling with, I guess you could say, a little bit of jealousy and envy, because I would look at other people and I would be like, I want your life, or I want your life. Oh, wow, you have an amazing job. Wow. But it wasn't until maybe probably a few years back that I finally learned to be okay with everything the way things are, and to be okay with where God has me right here, right now. And if and when he takes me somewhere else, wherever that may be, I must learn to accept it and be obedient. But for right now, I am a blessed man. I have a job. My coworkers are amazing. I'm surrounded by amazing people. I attend an amazing church. What more could I ask for? Roof over my head, food in my stomach. All my basic needs are met. I have a pretty decent car. So, yeah. What more could I ask for? What more could I need? I have everything I could ever possibly need or want. I work a minimum wage job, and I drive just an ordinary vehicle, and I live in a house that was built in 1978, my childhood home. I have a cat. I do not, by any means, have a very rich, luxurious, glamorous life. But when it comes to community and my relationship with Jesus, that's most important. I seriously feel like the richest man in the world when it comes to those things. My relationships with people and my relationship with Christ. But here's the thing. Christian is just a label, but it's supposed to be, it should be, more than just a label. I prefer to call myself a Christ follower or a passionate follower of Jesus, something along those lines. Because at the end of the day, Christian, first of all, that's just a label, and secondly, that sounds too religious. And it's not about religion. It's about relationship. Relationship with your brothers and sisters in Christ, and relationship with Christ himself, and the freedom that we experience through our relationship with him and with each other. Religion gives us rules. Jesus gives us freedom. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you can call yourself a Christian and then go out and do whatever you want. I'm not saying that at all. I understand there has to be some fruit. At least some. I get that. And we are called to strive for righteousness every day. We may stumble and fall along the way, but we're called to strive for it regardless. Until we go to heaven and we get our brand new heavenly bodies. And I think the difference between religion and Jesus is Jesus says, "Come follow me, and I will show you the right way to live." But he does it for us without the burden of going through the motions and trying to do works and earn our way into heaven. Don't get me wrong, there's still value in works. Scripture even tells us that faith without works is dead. But works is not what saves us. Jesus saves us. And so religions and denominations and places like that are all about works, their hearts are not in the right place because they're trying to earn their way into heaven. And it doesn't work that way. You need Jesus. We all do. Jesus gave me back my clarity. Jesus gave me back my peace, my joy, and my love. And now I'm so much more secure in myself to the point where I don't care what other people think of me. Not because I don't care about them, I just don't care what they think. There's a difference. God brought me through it all. And for that, I am super, super grateful. I believe that it's because of Jesus that I am where I am today. I couldn't do this without him.